Jerry
Oh,
Proctor.
So listen, everybody watching this, every time I've had the pleasure of hanging out with Shams a few times and being on, every time I see him, no matter where I am, he always hits me with the Proctor. And is that your Tommy
Listen,
voice?
you're my that's my Tommy voice. But I don't know. I went back and checked. Ghost always said your name Proctor, and
Ghost,
so
yeah.
I thought it was the Ghost voice, but it was really the Tommy voice when I watched it over again. But you're the most favorite lawyer in television history, in my opinion. This is just my
Wow.
opinion.
Wow. I actually
there's a
thought
lot
for
of
a
great ones.
second, because we met a few years back when Power was going on. I thought for a second, wouldn't it be cool? And spoiler alert coming, wouldn't it be cool if I leaked Proctor getting killed to Shams to report on Twitter and
No,
got
no,
you
no.
into the entertainment business?
The Power fans would have been on my head if I did that. They would have. I get a lot of backlash sometimes with the NFL stuff. I
Right.
think Power fans would have been on me if I said that because they loved you. They loved your character. I wish I could have played a character. Sometimes in my other life, I wish I played a show character like that.
Well, listen,
You're the goat. You're the goat.
Power never ends, right? The Power universe will go on. So I think if we continue having you on the Throwback show, I got to get Courtney Kemp to give you a cameo at the very least in one of the spinoffs.
Make it happen.
We'll make
it happen, Jerry.
So, how you been, buddy? You haven't been too busy in the last 15 hours. Let me ask you something off the rip. When you are sitting there knowing I'm about to drop something that's probably, the city that never sleeps? Well, they sleep sometimes, but I'm about to drop something that's going to make everybody in New York wake the F up, which is what you did to me. So when you send out the tweet of that trade, do you almost like, I'm not even going to look at Twitter for 12 hours because I know you got to be on your phone for work. We know how you are with your phone. What is the feelings when you're just about to drop a bombshell on New York City?
I mean, the first thing is just like get the news out accurately, responsibly. Obviously, breaking the news, and we at the Athletic, I kind of got wind around Wednesday, Thursday range that the
Wow.
Knicks were really pursuing Karl-Anthony Towns, and this has been ongoing, right? Like this is over the last year, 2 years. A guy that has been of interest. You think about Donovan Mitchell, you think about Karl-Anthony Towns. Obviously, they were able to get Jalen Brunson. They got Mikal Bridges kind of in the quiet of draft week, and
Yeah.
so this pursuit of Karl-Anthony Towns really picked up steam over the last, I think, 2 weeks when the Knicks started calling Minnesota about him, making offers, making concepts of offers. They were just giving hard no's repeatedly.
Wow.
No, no, and way back even around draft time, July and into the months of August. A lot of the offers that the Knicks were conceptually discussing, from what I'm told, were around Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson, and that just from Minnesota's perspective, that was not going to get it done. And over the last week is when finally the inclusion of Dante DiVincenzo was made in this proposal, not Mitchell Robinson. So then you have Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, but still, that was a no. Minnesota wanted an asset, and last night the Knicks, from what I'm told, finally put that first round pick from Detroit on the table. And we got wind yesterday that there were active conversations, ongoing conversations. But again, Jerry, like I didn't know until, maybe 15, 20 minutes before we dropped the news, me and my colleague John Krasinski at The Athletic. You never know exactly when it's a deal that's this fluid. When you get wind that, a couple of days out that it's active, it's ongoing. You think, okay, maybe it takes a little bit more time. It's a Friday night, maybe it goes into Saturday. But once we got the word that this was on and popping, obviously we got to it, and from there, there's a lot that went into it, right? Like you drop the initial tweet, then it's the terms, and then
Right.
it's all the fallout, especially now given the second apron rules and the Knicks having to include Charlotte as the third team and Daquan Jeffries. They're still trying to figure out which contracts are going to be going to Charlotte in sign and trade deals.
Right.
Will it be a Charlie Brown? Will it be a Dwayne Washington? So there's still that. Daquan Jeffries has been confirmed. He will be a part of that deal. He's going to get a great contract, well above his minimum, to be a part of this trade. Not a bad Friday night news for Daquan Jeffries, who's probably sitting in wherever he was at and got some amazing news from his agent.
Yeah.
But
That's a dumb question, real quick.
Dumb
Dumb fan question. Who doesn't understand that well? So for Daquan, he's getting this contract to fill in the money for the trade, right?
Literally, they
Sort of.
needed off the top of my head, I think like around $8 million or something. It's, 6, 7, $8 million to buffer that deal, and because of the second apron and all the rules along with salaries,
Right.
and so they have to. The deal for the Knicks was over the last couple of days is finding who that third team is going to be. And they had a few teams lined up. Charlotte became the team for them, and they're going to be sending some second round draft compensation to the Hornets, from what I'm told, to take those contracts on, and one including Daquan Jeffries, who I'm told is going to be getting significantly over $2 million for his inclusion in this deal. So not
Love
a
that.
bad Friday night for Daquan Jeffries.
Love that. Yeah, Karl-Anthony Towns was a name that Knick fans have been hearing for a while. But I think, and after the emotional part went away for me as a diehard Knicks fan, I started to really think about the lineup with KAT and what can happen. The emotional part is because, we last saw Julius Randle end of January dislocating his shoulder after a great run once the Knicks got OG, right? I think all Knicks fans wanted to just see it. I think that's why the initial reaction was like, wait a minute, what? Why? But when you start to really peel it back, Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be playing center for this team. How much of it do you think was also the health of Mitchell Robinson being up in the air, that they had to get a 5 in there, and they feel like they're all in with this?
The health definitely played a factor, and from what I'm told, it's going to be multiple months, 3 months potentially. Like, this is something that the Knicks are racing for, and that's their hope, their expectation now. But we've seen with Mitchell Robinson exactly when that'll be. He came back from procedure last year for the playoffs, and then it ended up just not looking great, not looking right. Then he needed to get another surgery, and so he's dealt a lot on his body over the last year, 2 years. To stay on the floor. And so, yes, the hope is that he's going to be back, December, January. But, if he's not having a center there, like Jericho Sims is someone who's going to be playing a much bigger role
Yeah.
this upcoming year. So getting a center was front of mind. I think there were other players that the Knicks looked into, Clint Capella, Nick Richards. There are a few guys that the Knicks made inquiries on, but Karl-Anthony Towns, far and away, that was the player that they looked into. That's the player that they wanted. Julius Randle, the Knicks had essentially already decided they were not going to move forward with an extension with him this offseason going into the season. And so if you have someone whose future is up in the air, that is kind of a ticking situation, right? When you think about it, you never want to deal with a player going in the last year of his deal. He has a player option for next year, not knowing his future. So now you have Karl-Anthony Towns locked in for 4 years straight. Dante DiVincenzo, we didn't know exactly, was he going to start, was he going to come off the bench?
Right.
So you break up that Villanova 4 that do all the guys that they have, Mikal Bridges, obviously Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and him. You break that up because you needed a center really, really bad. And this isn't just any center. This is an all NBA, all-star caliber center, highest paid Knick now, currently on this roster. And that's going to come with its own levels of pressure once Karl-Anthony Towns is in New York and is going to be playing at the Garden. But this was their guy. This was their target. It was just going to be about, were they going to match Minnesota's asking price?
Yeah, I've grown now to know, at least with the Leon Rose front office, for a while it was, the Knicks are going to trade for Donovan Mitchell. That was the public story. Never happened. It felt like every public story is never what happened. There's always a little pivot that he's working on. So I love the way the Knicks have been moving, but was there any chance that they could have kept DiVincenzo? Only because he's so beloved. This isn't even, we need him. I do think we need his shooting, but KAT replaces a lot of that. Was that like the final straw for Minnesota, you think? Like, give us DDV, because I bet him, by the way, plus 1,200 to win Sixth Man of the Year. That was my pick for Sixth Man of the Year with the Knicks.
He might still do it.
Do I keep that bet
with Minnesota. He might still do it. I think DiVincenzo was the critical piece here. DiVincenzo in a first-round pick, that's what got this over the top. DiVincenzo's inclusion at least started the conversation to where, okay, this is the concept Minnesota at least has to look at, but still, that they're not ready to accept that. They were giving hard nose to this Randle DiVincenzo concept over the last week. It wasn't until last night when that first round pick got in where Minnesota, their ownership group, and that played a factor as well. We know about their ownership squabble that's taking place. And so that was really what took this over the top. But DiVincenzo's inclusion made this a real conversation in Minnesota's eyes. That's someone that Minnesota came really, really, really close to signing in free agency in 2023. Dante DiVincenzo, a lot of people around the league believe he was headed to Minnesota, but then the Knicks came with their pursuit and got him locked into a 4-year deal. So now Minnesota gets the guy that they've coveted get Randle, and he has a long-standing relationship with Chris Finch. I'm told he spoke. He's very excited now, I think, to be in Minnesota.
Wow.
But Chris Finch was with him in New Orleans when he played there with Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
And so I think there is some synergy there with the coaching staff in Minnesota.
And then speaking of synergy, before you let you go, you have to think that this was something Thibs was very interested in because he coached Towns already. And I think if he had any big beefs or qualms about this situation and breaking it up, I'd like to think we would have heard, well, the front office would have heard from Thibodeau about that. He coached Towns. I mean, it was definitely an interesting run they had over there in Minnesota. Can't say it was smooth sailing, but to reunite says something.
Yeah, it was like a weird triangle that was going on
Yeah.
there, right? You have Thibs, Thibs bringing in Jimmy Butler. That was his guy.
Right.
And so then Jimmy asks out, and then KAT, kind of gets stuck in the middle of all that. But I would say Tom Thibodeau, Karl-Anthony Towns, from everything I've heard over the last few years, I don't think that's a relationship that has been fractured. I think they've gotten on the same page over the last few years. It always gets better when cooler heads prevail and you get a sense for them. I think the Knicks, their coaching staff, I think they were fully on board with bringing Karl-Anthony Towns in.
So last thing before we wrap up with you here, I hate these terms, but we haven't heard this term from the Knicks organization in so long. This feels like an all-in. We want to be there with the Celtics, and they must think that this is the move that puts them over the edge. Because all I heard on Twitter, the only other team rival fans I didn't hear anything from like Bucks fans for whatever reason. Obviously, the Nets fans. It was Celtic fans who were hating on the trade. Sixers fans who just hate on me and Knick fans all together. So to me, that tells me that not that no one shook, but this is now the all-in. We are going for a championship in New York.
This is somewhat risky on both sides, right? From Minnesota's perspective, you get rid of Karl-Anthony Towns, you bring in Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo. There's a level of risk there. For the Knicks, you've committed a lot of money in this roster. This has become a top-heavy roster of sorts. That starting five is up there for one of the best in the league, no doubt. What does the bench look like? What's the bench production going to be this upcoming year for the Knicks? But from a talent perspective, from a finances perspective, and an asset perspective, they've got that Washington first-round pick. That's their best real asset, I think, around the league. That's the asset that teams look at.
Yeah.
They've gone all in with most of their draft picks, to Brooklyn for Mikal Bridges, and now to Minnesota for Karl-Anthony Towns. They've gotten rid of two of their, one was an all-NBA player, one was the guy, Dante DiVincenzo, who could start, come off the bench, six-man of the year candidate. So they have gone and depleted their assets, some of their depth. This is their group, and that's going to come with expectations, no doubt.
I'm not going to make you give an answer on this necessarily, but I'm just going to say, and we'll just go off your facial responses. Do we think the Knicks are fully done with moves? Might not be blockbuster, but do we think that this is the line, or could they still even be players at the trade deadline? Like, do they even have enough? We always talk about, oh, now we have all these draft picks and all these assets. When are we going to make the move? It's starting to feel like now the war chest is emptying.
Yeah, you always you have contracts.
Right.
You can always align contracts. The one thing that I would look at if you're the Knicks, they gave up Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, and Keita Bates-Diop, three guaranteed contracts in this trade. You get one contract back in Karl-Anthony Towns. So already you are going to have open roster spots.
Mm-hmm.
And two players that the Knicks quietly signed over the last few weeks, this lets you know this is something that they've given thought to. Marcus Morris, a guy that they view as a 5'4" on this roster.
Yeah.
And then Landry Shamet, a shooter. Guy that could play the Dante DiVincenzo role. So those two players with the open roster spots, I think the Knicks are going to maintain some flexibility, having both of those guys on non-guaranteed deals. If you keep one or both of them into the season, you still have the flexibility of having open roster spots. So not necessarily another blockbuster trade or having a trade of some sort, but those open roster spots, those spots, especially for a team that clearly needs some depth on the bench along, this starting five, you think about best starting fives in the league. Boston's obviously up there. You think about the depth this Knicks team has now. You bring in Karl-Anthony Towns, that's going to be up there. And so, but what will the bench look like? Jerry,
Right.
You need to have a good bench. You need players that you can rely on, especially if injury comes. And I would look at guys like Marcus Morris, Landry Shamet. That's going to be kind of their next wave of players to keep an eye on if you're Knicks fans.
It would just be awesome if in Hollywood we could trade actors from TV shows. I really think that would be exciting. I think you would crush it as like the Hollywood insider for trades via TV shows. Like
we gotta, I feel like there was an opportunity there when Zeke was still alive on Power Ghost. Like could have had a basketball insider maybe. I'm just saying.
Well, dude, I can't thank you enough. Again, I was going through your initial post, just millions and millions of views. And you sent shockwaves through, obviously, New York. I think the entire NBA to a degree. You're awesome at what you do. You're one of my favorite people in the world to talk to. Thank you for taking the time. Go enjoy. I mean, I know you're not going to enjoy because you're going to go right back to work. I know you. I know you're going to be right back on
training camps. Training camps start. Media days Monday. Training camps Monday. But Jerry, obviously, anytime for you, man. You're the best. You're not only the best lawyer on television, or we're the best lawyer on television. A lot of respect for you, man. Appreciate you.
I'm getting you on the silver screen. I'm getting you either in Power or whatever. But your hair is too good to not put it on screen. You got the Hollywood hair, man. All right, Chunks. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.